Recently, I saw Mr. Wen mention the word people's economy. Some scholars were terrified and even let dogs bite people. I think the worry is too much. This word is not a new word. There is also people's road. Some people say that it means driving backwards, taking care of everything, but since the day the word was born, it has no such meaning. According to the interpretation of Chinese characters, it is very simple, that is, any economy that starts from safeguarding the interests of the people is called the people's economy. I have worked in the workshop for so many years, and I understand it from the perspective of migrant workers. Observing labor laws in the factory is the lowest level of people's economy. This belongs to the high-level people's economy, which is related to personal morality, and we cannot force others to do so. Panicked scholars, who came from Western economics, do not want to see words created by China. In their knowledge structure, there are only market economy and planned economy, either one or the other. In fact, they did not see through the essence of American imperialism. They did not have a market economy or a planned economy, only a monopoly economy. The land and energy were divided up by several big families, and no one else could enter. Even if a Musk pops up now, they have made it clear that if you don't serve our monopoly economy, you will die. So now Musk is also serving the US military-industrial complex. As for Mr. Wen, when he said the term people's economy, it was not his original creation, but a great man who said it a long time ago. However, Mr. Wen did not explain it clearly, or did not develop it in detail, so there is no way to implement it. Economic theory is dynamic, and it is constantly modified as the environment changes. As long as your changes remain the same and always protect the interests of the people, it is called the people's economy. In 1933, the great man wrote an article called Economic Work Must Be Attentioned. At that time, the revolutionary work was in full swing. He proposed to carry out economic construction, but many people opposed it, saying that the revolution should be victorious, and construction should be carried out in peaceful times. These opinions, he said, were wrong. Without economic construction, the material conditions for the revolution would not be guaranteed, and the people would be weary in the long war. The dissatisfaction of the workers and peasants with their lives has affected our expansion of the team. We want to engage in the people's economy, which does not conflict with revolutionary work. We are just organizers, mobilizing the masses to carry out economic work. How to develop the people's economy, he does not go from theory to theory, but first conducts research and then finds the problem. For example, why are farmers muddling along, and those who stutter are unwilling to struggle anymore? That is because of their status. No matter how much they do, they get very little, and this kind of result will appear. Their status must be improved, and after the land is distributed, the peasant association must be required to protect their economic interests. In addition, he discovered a phenomenon, such as his investigation in Tahi and Wannan counties. Farmers sold grain to merchants for 50 cents a load, and merchants shipped it to Ganzhou and sold it for 4 yuan a load, and merchants brought back salt for 1 yuan. 7 caddies, shipped to our district, sold for 1 yuan and 12 taels. Isn't this terrifying exploitation? We can no longer ignore phenomena like this, and we must manage them in the future. In the various economic articles he wrote in the 1930s, he did not mention the word planning. At that time, the territory was very small. The people's economic components he mentioned were divided into 3 parts: public enterprises, cooperative enterprises, and private enterprises. The idea of private is not only illegal, but also encouraged. The public economy is for the overall situation, it is a credit system, and private individuals cannot do it. For example, in 1933, 3 million yuan, the currency of the year, was issued for economic construction bonds. If we allow a private person to do it, and after the money is collected, the person runs away, and the common people hate not the private person, but us. They will say that we are the umbrella of this bad business, and this kind of thankless work must be eliminated. The cooperative economy is actually a collective economy. At that time, 1 or 2 people could not do the rural economic construction. The abandoned land had to be picked up and new land developed, which required a lot of labor. The rural economy should be developed as soon as possible. Labor cooperatives and farming teams have to be established. How to ensure that the fields are profitable and transported out, then farmers have to be called on to build roads and water conservancy. In addition, Agricultural research schools must be established to scientifically cultivate the fields to ensure increased production and income. The private economy should be vigorously advocated. Tea, silk, and satin, etc. are also needed by people with good economic conditions, but the situation of selling salt and rice 10 times higher is not allowed again, and the materials that ordinary people depend on for survival must be controlled. We should encourage other handicraft industries. In the border areas of Fujian, Zhejiang, and Jiangxi, some industries that have never been lacking in the area, such as paper making, weaving, and sugar refining, have developed. As long as we do not stop the private economy, as long as it is not outside the scope of the government's laws, we must promote and encourage it. The current development of the private economy is the need of the interests of the country and the people. Needless to say, the private economy now accounts for absolute advantage, and it will inevitably remain an advantage for a long time. The current private economy is still in the form of small-scale operations. January 23, 1934, our economic policy. In the elaboration of the people's economy, he also mentioned the importance of cooperatives and the state-run economy, that is, scale. Statistics from the two provinces of Jiangxi and Fujian show that consumer cooperatives and grain cooperatives are the most developed, followed by production cooperatives. Credit cooperatives have just begun. After development, they will gradually dominate the private economy and gain a leading position. Therefore, the state-owned economy should be developed as much as possible. And the development of cooperative economy on a large scale should go hand in hand with rewarding private economic development. Our method of using state fiscal revenue should be strictly different from the Kuomintang. It is very clear that we should earnestly carry out the construction of the people's economy for the benefit of the nation. Only we have implemented a planned and organized economy. Construction work can save the people of the whole country from unprecedented catastrophe. After the big framework is implemented, the following is the minutiae, to solve the problems of the people's clothing, food, housing, firewood, rice, oil, and salt, disease and sanitation, marriage, the people's economy, and ultimately, to solve the real-life problems of the people. Article on January 27, 1934, Caring for the Lives of the Masses, Paying Attention to Working Methods. He also cited two examples. Every meeting of representatives of workers and peasants in Tingzhou City only discusses the expansion of teams and the mobilization of transportation teams, completely ignoring the lives of the masses. The house of a poor peasant was burned down. The township government mobilized the masses to donate money to help him. 3 people had no food to eat. The township government and the mutual aid society immediately donated rice to relieve them. This kind of township government is really imitating the township government, and Tingzhou we have to learn from Changgang Township and oppose bureaucratic leaders like Tingzhou City. The more you go to the grassroots level, the more complicated things are. If you shout slogans at the top, but still study theories at the bottom, it's over. At the bottom, is to pay attention to the life problems of the masses. For example, women need to learn to plow. Who can they find to teach them? Children want to study, but is there a primary school? The wooden bridge opposite is too small and pedestrians will fall. Do you want to do it? What about repairing it? Many people suffer from sores and diseases, so what can be done? I briefly talked about his articles on the people's economy in 1933 and 1934, and I can understand why some scholars' debates are so superficial, with too much talk on paper, and some people even fear the word people. Stuck in the market economy or the planned economy, or some other new concept economy, such as a group of people who have created an internet economy, these are not the point. The point is that you buy farmers' corn for 70 cents and sell it for 9 yuan. It is not the people's economy. In the 1930s, administrative intervention was used. Now it is a society ruled by law. If you interfere administratively, the bosses will always jump up and cry, but you can adopt tax adjustment. If I have high profits, I will pay high taxes, and then I will subsidize the growers with finances. This is back to the people's economy came up. Scholars nowadays should not quarrel all day long, especially after reading a few shabby books in Europe and America, thinking that they are looking at the people from the perspective of God. What do you know about people's economy? The people's economy is centered on the interests of the people, doing more practical things and less empty words, such as visiting the workshop. Why do many people work 14 hours a day? Why does the boss not compensate for layoffs? Why are there labor agencies everywhere? Why do rural children have to board when they go to elementary school? Why do you scold the parents, uncles, and aunts when lending money to a son and collecting money? Scholars choose a homework problem at random, and then go to solve it, and I respectfully call you the economist of the people. Recently, I saw Mr. Wen mention the word people's economy. Recently, Professor Wen Taijun, a well-known expert on Sunung issues, proposed the concept of people's economy. Three economists, Xiang Songzuo, Ma Guanyuan, and Ran Zeping immediately questioned, triggering an internet battle that was far more intense than expected. Wen Taijun believes that global competition with the country as the unit, as long as the economy meets the four characteristics of independence, localization, comprehensiveness, and people's nature, it belongs to the people's economy. Xiang Songzuo, Ma Guanyuan, and Ran Zeping responded to Wen Taijun's discussion, classifying people's economy as planned economy, thinking that they want to push society back to the era of planned economy of ownership by the whole people. Even directly used offensive language against Wen Taijun. The dispute over the people's economy has thus evolved into a competition to continue to adhere to the market economy or to retreat to the planned economy. In this tense debate, Wen Taijun has been silent. Rigorous academic debate is a must for theoretical innovation. However, in the very sensitive internet public opinion field, discussions are also highly positional, and it is easy to fall into a situation of labeling and opposition, so that you lose your way. In the new era and under the new situation, in the face of internal and external challenges and pressures, we must be careful not to be distracted by the contest of theories. Development is the last word. Revisiting the historical wisdom of China's reform and opening up, and how to make overall plans and balance in light of reality, is testing the wisdom of our generation. In many policy debates, the status of the two parties is unequal. The other party can be implemented as long as he proves that his policy is useful. At this time, you can only fight with the other party. Implement his policies. The school of liberty tried the latter method, but in the end it still fell short. The king seizes the wealth of the sky, bans the city, enforces the rules and punctuality, and controls the people with severity. In a good year, you will accumulate money to prepare for exhaustion. In an unlucky year, you will sell money and goods. In the past, the water and soup were dry, and the people were scarce, and they might leave each other to get food and clothing. You took the gold from Mount Li and the copper from Mount Zhuang to Tang, minted coins to redeem his people, and the world called benevolence. In the past, the wealth was insufficient, and the soldiers might not be paid. However, Shandong was hit by a disaster, and Qi and Zhao were starved. Therefore, the goods that are all lost, the wealth of the treasury, are not for Jiawanmen and dedicated to military divisions, but also for relief of poverty and preparation for floods and droughts. The doctor argues that the wealth lost is not only used for military expenses, but also used for poverty relief. Even if the financial expenditure is not all used on civilians, as long as it is used for a penny, it can exaggerate its achievements 10 times or even 100 times. In ancient times, taxes were paid on the 11th, and Zhejiang was not banned because of the time, and the people of Li were taken to Nanmu without losing their duties. Therefore, 3 years of plowing yields 1 year of storage, and 9 years of plowing yields 3 years of storage. This is why Yu and Tang prepared for floods and droughts to keep the people safe. If grasses are not cultivated and fields are not cultivated, even if you are good at the wealth of mountains and seas, and you can make a lot of profits, you still cannot support them. Therefore, the ancients planted trees and planted trees for fun, and sometimes they had enough food and clothing. Although they had been suffering for many years, people did not get sick. Therefore, food and clothing are the foundation of the people, and farming is the duty of the people. If the two are cultivated, the country will be rich and the people will be safe. The poem says, 100 houses are full, but women are better off. The literature has found a loophole in the doctor's argument. First, the money that is lost comes from the people. Now that the imperial court has taken a large part of it as military expenses, it is high taxes that have reduced the ability of the people to save themselves. One tax, then the people are fully equipped to deal with disasters. Therefore, the focus is on the basics, and the basics are established and the people are safe. It is not a treasure for a sage to rule a family, nor is it a treasure to make a country rich. In the past, Guanzhong relied on power to dominate, but the Ji family died on the basis of strength. So that the management of the family and the maintenance of life must be based on farming, so Shun did not guard Tao and Yiyin did not work as a cook. Therefore, those who are good for the country, under the world, I am high, and the world is light, I am heavy. Change the basics at the end, and swindle the truth with vain. Today's wealth in the mountains and rivers is lost and stored, so it is important to control the weight and serve the princes. The gold of Ru and Han is a small tribute, so it lures foreign countries to catch the treasures of Hu and Jiang. Husband at the end of the Chinese side, got the riches of the Huns, but lost the use of the enemy country. Mules, donkeys, and camels are used to carry their tails into the fortress, and sables, scorpions, and horses are all our livestock. Mink, fox, and raccoon dogs are collected and used to fill the inner mansion, and jade, coral, and glass are national treasures. That is, foreign goods flow inward, but the benefits do not leak out. If foreign matter flows inward, the state will use it for free, and if the profit does not leak out, it will be used by the people. The poem said, 100 houses are full, but women are better off. Managing a family is not a treasure, and a rich country is not one. The doctor pointed out that trade is also an important way to increase wealth. Exchange your own cheap handicrafts for the luxury goods of the enemy country. Valuable goods from abroad come in, and domestic worthless goods go out. This is a rich country. Methods. The ancients, business, and goods without hesitation, worked hard but not false. Therefore, when a gentleman plows, crops, farms and fishes, he is actually one. Merchants are always cheating, workers are pretending to be scolding, they are peeping in their hearts but their hearts are not ashamed, and they are deceiving their husbands by cheating their husbands. In the past, Envu filled the palace and embroidered clothes, so Yinjao passed away, and Envu eventually abolished his country. Today the use of mules and donkeys is not as good as oxen and horses, and the use of ermines and scorpions is not beneficial to the reality of brocade. The beautiful jade and coral come from Kunshan, and the pearl and rhinoceros come from Guilin, which is more than a li away from Hanwan. Counting the merits of cultivating mulberry and the cost of capital and wealth, it is a thing that sells for 100 times its price, and one bow can win 10,000 bells of millet. If a husband loves rare things, he will wear obscene clothes. If he values things from afar, he will fill up his wealth with goods. Therefore, the king does not treasure and useless to save his people, and does not love exotic goods to enrich his country. Therefore, the way of rationalizing the people is to save the use and uphold the basics, and divide the soil and fields. This paragraph of literature is almost pointing at the doctor's nose and cursing. Can we not know whether foreign luxury goods are useful? Those beautiful jade and coral are of no use at all, they are just utensils for the enjoyment of the upper class. Foreign goods are valuable not because they are useful, but because they like them. This paragraph of literature is a bit urgent. If you criticize the leader first, how could the leader still accept your suggestion? Swear words must be left at the end. From the capital to the east, west, north, south, through the mountains and rivers, passing through the prefectures and states, all and rich capitals are nothing but 5 connected streets, where merchants gather, and where all things are colonized. Therefore, the sage depends on the timing of the sky, the wise depends on the wealth of the land, the superiors take from others, and the middlemen work on their shapes. Changju, Jiu, without the accumulation of hundreds of gold, the disciples of Zijiao, without the wealth of Yudun, Huan, Zhou, Qi, Lu, and merchants are all over the world. Therefore, it is due to the wealth of merchants, or the accumulation of tens of thousands of gold, and the pursuit of profit and envy. Why should a rich country use its own farmers, and why should its people use wells? The doctor used the diversity of China's geographical environment as an excuse to explain that China's terrain is complex, and not every place can do a good job in agriculture. Taking advantage of the situation and developing a local economy can also make the country rich and the people strong. The doctor's embellishment is very clever. It is clear that the literature accuses the upper class of being fond of luxury goods and affecting agriculture. The literature also recognizes the viewpoint of commercial goods without hesitation, and workmanship without falsehood. It has become the only foundation of a rich country. Developing a diversified economy based on agriculture is not the same concept as developing only agriculture. The flood is overwhelming, but it has the achievements of Yu, and the river floods, but it has the achievements of Xianfang. Shangzhou was tyrannical, but there was Menjin's conspiracy, and the world was troubled, but there was wealth of envy. From ancient times to the rule of law, the people are simple but expensive, and they are happy but need few. At this time, roads are seldom traveled, and grass grows in the city. Therefore, those who are not strong in farming have nothing to fill their emptiness, and those who are not strong in weaving have nothing to hide. Although there is a need to join the party, and one's techniques can't be used skillfully. From ancient times to the present, those who do not give and get rewarded, and those who do not work but make merit, have never existed. Literature struggles a little more at the end, emphasizing that production is the core of a rich country, and that without labor there is no harvest, but it is useless, and the suggestion will not be adopted. It is true that production is the core, but production does not need to be done by meat eaters. Meat eaters use the goods produced by the people to trade and enrich their country, not the country of the people. Doctors don't care whether the core of a rich country is production or not. As long as it is demonstrated that production is not the only way to make a rich country, the doctor's goal will be achieved. How could the emperor block his way of making money? What should a 90-year-old be like? Basking in the sun, listening to music, going out for a walk, the days pass slowly. Almost no one can associate the elderly with sex life and AIDS. But in Yuwo, a 91-year-old lady was infected with AIDS when she was living in her old age. At first, she was unwell, so she asked her son to take her to the hospital for examination. After this investigation, it was found that something was wrong. Holding the AIDS-diagnosed medical record, the old lady's son couldn't figure out why his own mother got such a disease. You know, the main route of transmission of AIDS is sexual transmission. How can an old man in his 90s have sex and be infected with AIDS if he takes 2 steps and may be out of breath for a long time? Not to mention that the old lady has been widowed for nearly 20 years, has never remarried, and usually lives alone. Under questioning by the doctor and her son, the old lady finally told the truth. It turned out that all of this was caused by desire. An old man in his 90s who lives alone in his later years will always feel a little lonely. In order to relieve loneliness, sometimes, the kind old lady will take in the homeless bum. First, it can add some popularity to the deserted home and accompany the lonely self. Second, they can also charge a small amount of accommodation fee to help supplement their families. But unexpectedly, there are rabbits and wolves who enter the house. A homeless man knocked on the old lady's door, wanting to share the bed. In a daze, the old lady agreed. HIV was contracted at this time. After the incident broke out, many people were shocked. There was a lot of scolding on the internet. Many people accuse the old lady of being disrespectful for being old, shameless when she is too old, and unscrupulous. These cursing were enough to make the nearly 100-year-old lady feel overwhelmed. The case announced by the Yuwa Center for Disease Control and Prevention has completely revealed the last fig leaf for the elderly in China. Some people say that in China, there are 2 types of people who are the most ashamed to talk about sex. One is minors and the other is the elderly. Minors are to remain ignorant, and the elderly are to be gradually abstinent as they grow older. But the truth is that, where people can't see it, the desire and arrogance of the elderly are actually stronger than those of the young. Do your parents still have sex? Some media conducted such a survey, and the subjects of the survey were all young people. The answer is basically like a withdrawal. Almost all young people think that their parents are old, and the elderly are basically more reserved, so they should have no sex life. Some people said that their parents lived in separate rooms a long time ago because they didn't want to affect each other's sleep quality. Others say that as you get older, your body will fail in all aspects. Too much intense exercise will increase your heart rate and blood pressure. For the elderly, it will be life-threatening. From various perspectives, no sex life seems to be a certainty for the elderly. But are the facts really as young people think? A sociologist has conducted a survey specifically on the sex life of the elderly. This survey is gradually lifting the fig leaf of the elderly. According to the survey data, the sex life of the 50-61-year-old population in China has increased significantly, and the sexual needs of the 60-80-year-old elderly also exist objectively. 53% of the elderly still maintain a certain frequency of sex life. In a certain park in Ningbo, Zhejiang, there appeared indecent services specifically for the elderly. Those who provide this kind of service are all middle-aged women in their 40s and 50s, and their targets are all old men who come for a walk in the park. You can touch your body for 10 yuan, and you can sleep with you for 80 yuan. They would sit directly on the old man's lap, grab each other's hand and stroke their body. If the other party does not show strong resistance, they will take the next step more boldly until the transaction is successful. In Don't Talk to Strangers, the sex life of the elderly is nakedly displayed in front of everyone. In Changpuhi Park in Beijing, a group of grandparents gathered. They didn't come for a walk in the park, but a blind date. The elderly here are not reserved at all. Their goals are clear, and there is no nonsense in the process of finding a partner. Once it is appropriate, it will immediately enter the topic. Hu Tian, a 65-year-old uncle, is not shy when facing the camera. He bluntly said that the only requirement he has for his partner is to be in good health. The so-called good health is not only able to eat and sleep, but also to meet the needs of both parties. When he was visiting the park, when Uncle Hu met a woman he liked, he would never beat around the bush, and would take her home directly. Hu Tian, 65, has a 45-year-old girlfriend whom he has been dating for more than a year. Uncle Hu is very different. In an interview, the three sentences are inseparable from sex. When asked what is the most romantic thing he has ever done, Uncle Hu also did not shy away. It's in the Dashilan cinema, that's all we have. What's the craziest thing you've ever done in a relationship? 4 times a day. Uncle Hu also said that his girlfriend, like him, is a person in great demand. The sex life of the elderly is crazier than we imagined. This kind of madness is very blatant. Some netizens commented that Uncle Hu is an old and dishonest person. Even if such a person has a grandson, he would not bring him up for fear of being led badly. Some people also say that such an old man is just used to flirting, the prodigal son grows old, and the dishonest person is still dishonest when he gets old. But in fact, Uncle Hu is a very emotional person. He carries a park card with him all year round, which has a photo of his wife who has been dead for many years. When I miss my wife, I will take it out and have a look. During his wife's illness, he has been by his side. After his wife passed away, he was alone in the empty house, and there were traces of the old man everywhere, which made people feel very sad. That's why Uncle Hu spends more time visiting parks and making girlfriends. It is not so much debauchery as it is his way of dispelling his sadness and loneliness. But obviously, the sex life of the elderly, even if it has been put on the bright side, is still hard to accept. Just as everyone thinks that children should be innocent and ignorant, so the elderly should be dignified and serious. It seems that once you get old, any needs become greed and extravagance. When the needs are spoken out, the desires that have been hidden in the dark are revealed, and instead of blessings and understanding, they are attacked and condemned. In my opinion, isn't such an inherent impression a kind of stereotype and imprisonment? It imprisoned the thoughts of the elderly, imprisoned the desires of the elderly, and even imprisoned the life and freedom of the elderly for the second half of their lives. Whether old or young, sexual needs are not only human nature, but also instinct. Getting older doesn't mean you will become heartless. When a person has consciousness, he has desires. This kind of thing is actually as normal as eating and drinking. Influenced by traditional thinking, Chinese people have always talked about sexual discoloration. Keeping silent is not the best way to solve the problem. On the contrary, this silence is breeding bigger problems. According to the World Health Organization, in 2019, the number of elderly people living with HIV in China has increased by 5 times compared with the previous 9 years. Among them, elderly male infected persons accounted for 70%. Uncle Chen, a 102-year-old from Jiangxi province, is one of them. He was lying on a hospital bed, pale and emaciated. The children kept crying by the window. After repeated questioning by the doctor, the source of infection was finally identified: prostitution. Elderly prostitution is nothing new. This problem will be magnified countless times in front of the widowed and disabled elderly. People need to eat when they are hungry, drink water when they are thirsty, and release their desires when they are full. Empty and desolate, they can only satisfy themselves through illegal means. But prostitution, after all, will be accused by thousands of people. So they can only keep silent until they are diagnosed, and then regret it. However, prostitution is only one of the channels through which AIDS spreads. Uncle Li in his 50s in Beijing has met many sexual partners through square dancing. Counting back and forth, he had sex with more than 50 women. After a period of time, Uncle Lee felt unwell, went to the hospital and was diagnosed with AIDS. Diagnosed with AIDS, not only will you lose face, but your family and children will also be ashamed. Therefore, Uncle Lee chose to act in a low-key manner and never went to a regular hospital for treatment. This also made things more and more serious. More than a dozen women who had sex with Uncle Lee were also diagnosed with AIDS one after another. But this kind of thing will eventually be accused by thousands of people. Regarding sex, many elderly people dare not talk about it, dare not mention it, let alone take safety measures. If someone catches me buying condoms, and if someone finds out that I am old and not serious, it will immediately spread to the streets and alleys. Not to mention that some elderly people have little knowledge of condoms and feel that they are too old and infertile, so they don't need to wear condoms at all. The lack of sexual knowledge and safety knowledge has become a hotbed for the breeding of AIDS, disturbing the old age that these old people should have enjoyed. Therefore, the elderly avoid talking about sex, and the young people ignore the sex life of the elderly, which does not mean that the problem does not exist. They may be trapped in shame, afraid to face up to their own needs, and unable to resist the laws of nature. Hidden, secretive. Unknowingly, more serious consequences were caused. There is a Korean movie Miss Dionysus, which also shows the embarrassment of the elderly in their later years to the world. Soo-ying, 65, is a sex worker. Her customers, no young people, are almost all gray-haired old people. Some of them are widowed, and some are paralyzed in bed for a long time. These old people have one thing in common: loneliness, and no spiritual support. Gradually, Soo-ying saw the shadow of her own future in these old people. This is the path that every aging person must go through. Rather than saying that Soo-ying is providing sexual services to the elderly, it is better to say that she provides spiritual and emotional services. Many elderly people find it difficult to conduct transactions due to physical reasons, so they only need Soo-ying to accompany them and chat. Rather than saying that they need sex, it is better to say that they need companionship and love more. These lonely old people, with nowhere to rest their emotions and aging bodies, live like walking dead. No matter how we age, we are born with similar desires and needs. The elderly are a group with normal psychological and physical needs. These needs should not be shackles of morality and shame. Their lives should not be defined as pure and ascetic. Busy for most of my life, I need emotional support in my later years, and life also needs attention, companionship, and love. It also needs more understanding and warmth from young people. Taking Tang as a name is actually a tradition of Chinese literati, such as Ji Xiaolan's Yue Thatched Cottage, Zhang Daqian's Tang, etc. Zhou Ziren called himself Zhitang. Mencius said, "The trouble with people is to be a teacher." Before I resigned, I was a full-time teacher in the system, taught some students, and published many articles on education, probably more than 100. I don't mean to like to be a teacher, but I just have to be a teacher for the sake of rice grains. During the period of reading Dao Zhang, I published some of my superficial knowledge about Dan Dao in the official account from time to time, which actually attracted the attention of many friends. Some of them asked for apprenticeship, and I reluctantly did them. Teacher. With the deepening of my understanding and understanding of alchemy, more and more articles have been accumulated, and the number of disciples has also increased a lot. These articles were later compiled into Studying Between Heaven and Man, the life wisdom of Beoputang, and the disciples I accepted, I pulled them into a group named Beoputang and set as such group rules. All the disciples of my Beopu Hall should abide by the hall rules of don't speak indiscriminately, and know what you know, and don't know what you don't know. It is best to keep silent about areas that have not been verified by yourself or that you are not familiar with. Don't believe in science, but you must have the scientific spirit of bold assumptions, careful verification. Don't believe in authority, but you must be in awe of everything in the world, and you must be humble to everyone. Don't compete with others for strength and victory, let others be stronger than others, and the bright moon shines on the river. You must have the spirit of I love my teacher, I love the truth more, and you can doubt and question everything I say, but you must prove your arguments with facts and logic. I have received strict training in Western natural sciences and social sciences. Although my interest in reading has shifted to the field known as metaphysics by the public, I have always disliked godly people and things, and I am not easy to treat anyone or anyone. Make conclusions. My understanding of alchemy is based on empirical experience, but at the same time, I also regard alchemy as the object of my academic research, so I hope that my disciples will do the same. However, the ideal is full, but the reality is very skinny. Although what I ask is only the bottom line of being a person, doing things, and learning, there are still some people who can't do it, and some people even show the evil of human nature to the fullest in the group. I have to clean these people out of the group. I can only blame myself for seeing it wrong at the beginning, but I really can't blame others. The ancients said, teachers, so preaching, accepting karma and solving doubts. Although they and I have the name of teachers and students, I never put up the airs of a teacher to anyone. Because, I know, students don't have to be inferior to teachers, and teachers don't have to be better than disciples. What I said may not be all right. I may just know a little more than them in some aspects, and they may also be here in the future. Achievements far surpass me. In many ways, they can also be my teachers. However, the dignity of teachers, after all, is that they want to learn something from me, so the necessary respect for me is still necessary. What's more, people need to respect each other, so the first condition for me to accept students is to respect me as a teacher. Some people think that they are great after listening to some rumors or reading a few specious books, so they look down on all living beings and are arrogant. It is best for such people to stay away from me, because you are in my presence. I can't get a good word to say. Learning is expensive and persistent. Mencius Gongsun Zhoushang said, although a good horse is good at walking, it will stop when it is exhausted. A poor horse walks slowly, or it will come first. That's why you can learn one thing and learn one skill, and you will keep making progress. There must be a day of success, and you must make good use of your energy. Today, people may aspire to learn, and once they are angry, day and night, after thousands of days, their minds will gradually grow, and they will eventually give up learning. Practicing and keeping in good health are lifelong things, cannot be separated for a day. If I fish for 3 days and dry the net for 2 days, there will definitely not be much effect. In this way, the ineffective crimes may be pushed on me. This is naked human nature. Teach me, how can I afford it? Therefore, if there is no perseverance, it is better not to learn. Chinese people are very hypocritical and have a bad habit that is difficult for Westerners to understand, that is, they are ashamed to talk about money. In fact, money is not dirty, but people's hearts are dirty. Money represents society's respect and recognition of individuals, and is an intermediary of labor exchange between people. I have labored for others, and I deserve to be paid for it, which is right and proper. I'm just an ordinary person, I have to eat and drink like anyone else. I also don't have a great wish to save all sentient beings, so I still have to charge tuition for my students. What's more, even a sage like Confucius has to teach students to practice. Tang Santang went to the West to learn scriptures, and the Buddha even accepted him a purple gold bowl. However, there are some people who think that it is immoral for me to charge fees, and ask me for it with confidence. Their logic is, if I really have cultivation, I should save all sentient beings, and I should teach my things for free without reservation. Otherwise, he has no cultivation base and is a liar. It's a pity that I really don't have much cultivation, but I just don't want to use my selflessness to feed their selfishness wrapped in a noble appearance. Not only that, but I will also block them, so in their eyes I become a bad guy. There are also some people who know that they have to pay when they go to the supermarket to buy things, but they are reluctant to learn from me, because what I teach them is only intangible knowledge, but what they buy in the supermarket is real things. They don't know that intangible knowledge is also valuable, even more valuable than tangible objects. In fact, it is not that they have not developed the habit of paying for knowledge, but that they have a problem with their character and always want to take advantage of others. In fact, many of my disciples are free, but they have never asked me for free. They sincerely want to learn from me, and are willing to pay the price, but they cannot meet my requirements because of reality. Whether it's free or not is up to me, and I don't accept anyone's moral kidnapping. Others thought my fees were a bit high because I only taught them a little bit. I suggest they read the following story. There was a problem with a ship, and many engineers were at a loss for what to do. The captain hired a top engineer, and the engineer took a look and drew a line somewhere. He said, "It should be enough to deal with this line place." The crew did so, and the ship returned to normal. The captain asked him how much it was. He said, 1 million. What? 1 million. The captain found him unreasonable. You just drew a line. Oh yes, he said, it's $1 to draw the line, but $999,999 to know where to draw the line. From the avenue to the simplicity. A diamond is far more valuable than a pile of junk. It takes more wisdom to simplify the complex than to complicate the simple. In order to explore the secrets of human life, it took me more than 10 years to acquire the ability to simplify complexities. This is where my value lies. Besides, life is priceless. Even if it can make people live an extra day, its value cannot be measured by money. I haven't put it down for more than 30 years, especially in literature, philosophy, sociology, communication, and pedagogy. This was also forced out in order to write a good review and earn some manuscript fees to subsidize the family. Later, it was also for self-help that I went to practice Kung Fu, read Dao Zhang, and learn Chinese medicine. In fact, the most difficult thing for me to learn is culture, but it is not difficult to learn to practice the art to keep in good health. However, as long as there are students who are willing to learn, I will guide them without reservation. The premise is that they are interested and have the ability to learn. However, so far, I have not been able to find anyone who is interested and capable of learning culture from me. There is actually a two-way choice between teachers and students. Whether I accept students or worship the master, the first criterion is moral character, followed by ability. But it takes 3 years to burn the jade, and 7 years to distinguish the material. We don't have so much time to observe a person, and sometimes it is inevitable that we will miss the point, so the story of the farmer and the snake is staged in reality. I can only blame my poor eyesight. Everyone has to pay for their own cognition. In today's society, people's hearts are not ancient, and many people ignore the basic bottom line of life for the sake of profit. It is really pitiful. In short, being far away from villains and being close to gentlemen is my criterion for dealing with interpersonal relationships. I have passed the age of knowing my destiny, and at this age, I don't need too many friends. Of course, I don't want to have any grudges with anyone, especially villains. I only have 2 ways to deal with the villain, either stay away, or give him a fist. When I was young, I used the latter a lot, but now I basically use the word hidden. The older you are, the less courageous you are, and there is nothing you can do about it. Wicked people have their own trials, so why should I bother to be this wicked person? Notes for purchasing: A Study Between Heaven and Man, The Life Wisdom of Baoputang, by the book with the author.